Folks, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Just a quick disclaimer, we are going to be recording this call and we're going to place those recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. So once again, good morning, happy Friday. Thank you for joining for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Today, we are going to talk about Visual Studio Codespaces. And by the way, I will share the slide deck. Today, we have very few slides, and because it's going to be a demo heavy session. So first of all, what are Visual Studio Codespaces? So Visual Studio Codespaces allow you to quickly create development environment on demand. And you can access those environments from Visual Studio Code if you have a modern browser, and Visual Studio 29 support is there. You have to do a private preview for that. It's currently in private preview. Okay, so that's how you can access those environments. You can basically um, kind of run your development over there. You don't have to create VMs and all that. It's all done behind the scene for you. It used to be known as VS Online. So it's a very powerful feature. And the thing is, you are only paid when you are using it. And we will talk about is why I say it's almost on demand, because there is I mean there's something to keep in mind when kind of you're taking advantage of those environments, that there is a uh, factor that come in, like how long you want to stay those environment keep those environment available while you're not working with them. So we will take a look at those factors as well. So in order to make kind of a demo more legitimate, what I'm doing is I am using a remote machine which only have Visual Studio Code. That's it. And that machine has kind of um, some stuff like the regular like Notepad and all, but it does not have any development stuff on it at all. Okay, all of that uh, is not available. So what we're going to show you how you can use a bare bone machine to develop your code using Visual Studio Codespaces. So first of all, just keep in mind that you have to have the um, extension on that. I have Azure account and a Visual Studio Codespace. So that's the need. You need an Azure account and Visual Studio Codespace extension on that machine. Once you have that, what you can do is you can go here and let's see how the the experience look like. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna do custom settings. So as you can see, I went into that extension, Remote Explorer, and then I clicked on create new code space, and then I'm gonna use custom settings. Okay, and here I'm gonna provide. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong name. Let me get the name of the repo. So here is my name of my repo. I'm gonna paste it here, and with that, I'm gonna name it NZAPL, and that's the last part is what size of machine. So right now there are 3 SKUs available: standard, basic, and premium. 4-core, 2-core, 4-core, 8-core. And by the way, you can change your environment without adversely impacting your with your development environment. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up standard. And this is what I was talking about. Send the code space after. So let's say you were working with your code space, okay? And then you have to do something else. how long you want your code space to be available. If you want it to available for a long time, just keep in mind the you are paying for the underlying environment. So that's how long you have to pay for that. If you don't, I mean, if you want to quickly went away, that's good. But then whenever you connect to it, there would be a slight lag time. So let's say you were working and then you went back to checking your email, then you come back. It may take a minute or a few 10, 15 seconds before it can reconnect to that. So let's say we pick up 30 minutes. So I'm just going to do that. And now it is creating that code space on the right hand side. You can see the logs. It's initializing code space. It should take only a few minutes since it's a demo. And normally things run slow in the demo. So just expect, a few maybe extra second. So as you can see, it's initializing the environment, and now it says now you can connect to the code space. So let's do connection. Okay. So it's now connecting to the code space. So first of all, I want to show something here. It's initializing. And while it is doing that, let's take a look at this existing environment. Sorry, all over the place. Let me just go to the command line. So I'm here, and let's type in Node.js or so Node.js, not Node.s. I don't even have Git on this machine. So basically, it's a clean machine. I'm running just the Visual Studio Code on top of it. And what I'm going to do is now, so this is my simple Node.js application. It's a kind of a hello world application. Hello Power Lunch. Today's the date of today. That's all. I'm going to put a breakpoint here. Okay. With that, this breakpoint that I put here, let's look at the settings. Let's look at the launch.json. Um, and I'm going to update it since it's my launch file from a Windows machine. I'm going to update it for a Linux machine. Okay. Folks, if you don't mind, can you please mute your phone? Uh, so with that, let me start uh, running this application. So just think of it. I'm running Visual Studio Code on this machine. There is an environment created for me behind the scene on which they cloned my repo that I provided, and now this thing is running there. So now Visual Studio is remotely connected to that. So as you can see here, let me just open the index.js, and I have a breakpoint here. So let me open this in a browser. So this comes up, and let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. As you can see, the breakpoint is there. Even if we move on that, we can see, okay, this is the value that's going to go. So I'm just going to say, continue. And with that, now this page is running. So if I go back to that particular page, you see it has printed out. So think of it. This thing is not running on my machine. This thing is running on that remote environment. Visual Studio is doing all the magic, connecting to that remote environment, Visual Studio Code, I mean, and doing all the back and forth communication and providing, and it's pretty fast. I mean, I I know that it's you can say that's okay. You're just doing a small Node.js application, but still, I mean, we're debugging the code, so it's kind of going end to end, and it's still pretty decent. So the point is, no matter kind of, and I'm just using a Node.js because a simple example, but you can use more complex code example, and so kind of, and if you have some settings, you can bring those in as well. And I will show you when we go through the UI experience of creating a workspace, how does that look like. So this is basically a hosted environment by Azure, and this is what we call cloud hosted Codespaces, okay? And I'm connecting to it from Visual Studio Code. Let's say that, for example, you don't even have Visual Studio Code. How you kind of go about that? So let's go to this browser and let's go to the code spaces. And these are all my code spaces that I have here. Let me refresh this page. These are all the code spaces. As you can see, one of them has suspended because I have given 30 minutes time, and I think it's more than 30 minutes, so it has suspended. So let's try to connect to the same another code space here. So let's try to connect to it, and I'm going to connect. So now we are opening it from the browser. So this is the Visual Studio in the browser, Visual Studio Code running in the browser. Now we are connecting it uh, through that. So that's so now it is connected, and same thing. I mean, I can go in here and I can put a breakpoint on this line, and let me just close this, and same thing. So in this case, I don't even need a I don't even need a VS Code. I can just, if I have a modern browser, I can run with that. So now I'm running debugger attached. Let's see what happens. Okay. So yeah, it's running. And once again, if I go to this window, so it's connecting to the forward port. Give it a second. Let me just try it like this. Let's see if that works. Yeah, the breakpoint is hit.
Maybe,
So I'm just, go ahead, please.
yeah, maybe that's what I wanted to check actually, the breakpoint. If
Yeah. Breakpoint is hit. Yeah. So it hits and we execute it and it's going forward. So the point is, and it's actually here. You see that? It's actually here. So that's where it kind of shows up, is the remote connection that it made to that instance through the browser. Okay. Since it's not Visual Studio Code that is doing it, that's why it's going through this browser instance. Kind of, this is what you see here, slightly convoluted, uh, but still you're just using a browser. So that allows you to connect to that. Any questions so far? Okay. Um, Before we move any further, I want to show you the experience, how it looks like if we create it visually. So let's open this one. Let's go in here. So these are, I try to create a code very similar. You have to give a code name, Git repository, that's optional. This is the same instance sizes, same suspend option, but this is interesting. That's where you can provide the dot file repo, and what it will do is it will kind of do your settings. So let's say you want to set some environment variable. You have some settings like, you know, um, uh, dot git or dot um, RC file, all that. All of those you can provide, and it will set those up. Okay, so that's if you want to do that. Okay. By the way, I mean, if there are any questions in the IM window, if somebody can, read those to me, since I'm not looking at the IM window.
you know, I'm on it, but there's
Thank you,
nothing. So
sir.
yeah, sure.
Okay, great. So with that, this is the hosted part of this thing. Okay, and before we move any further, I wanna kind of share the pricing information, how that works. So if these are the cost per hour, and as you are running it, so these are the instance type. So you, when you create an environment, one instance is created for you, and depending on what instance you use, this is the type. You can make it more efficient by lowering the suspend time. You can make it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or I mean 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. Just keep in mind, higher the time, the environment will be kept warm for you. So let's say if you are like multitasking, doing some development, checking emails, coming back, environment will always be there for you. There will be no lag. But if you keep it lower, what will happen is if you come back, it may be suspended. You have to, wait for it to come back, but then your cost will drop. So, just a give and take. Just keep that in mind. These are some of the scenarios that they have provided, how much it will cost if you are doing that. You know, so basically, you are doing heavy development. Um, you know, and you are spending 40 hours in the entire month, that's $20 will be your cost. So these are some of the things that they have estimated. So give you an idea, especially in the age of COVID-19, where a number of companies have enforced in a way where their employees are working at home. It's hard to have sometime kind of a uniform environment for everyone, where everybody's kind of a testing development, everybody have different machines. So that can provide uniformity, and bring all the developers at the same level, where you have a set of environment that you say, okay, everybody create this environment when they are doing development. Okay, and that's how you can make sure that every developer machine has the same settings, things like that. So these are kind of some of the things that this code spaces allow you to do. And by the way, I want to talk about one very interesting feature, which is you can host your own code space. So basically, let's say that you have a very like a super duper machine. I'm going to use super duper machine at home that you use for development. But let's say that you are not sitting in your room, you're sitting maybe in another room, or maybe at Starbucks or something, and you want to kind of do some, and you just thought of something and you want to do some development. You can take notes on your laptop or something like that, or kind of a tablet. But how about if you can access that environment without kind of without actually being physically there? So that's the self-hosted namespaces, code spaces, where you can host your own environment, or you can have access to environment that you have at uh, in your own, and kind of that you have self-hosted. So to share that example, I have this machine. This is my Surface Book, and I am running kind of I've provided it as a self-hosted environment, and I can access this environment from other machines as well. So let's go back to once again to our um, uh, remote machine. So as you can see, there are these Visual Studio Codespaces, and I have this environment that is there. And by the way, for self-hosted, it's free, because since you are hosting it, we are just provided the connectivity. That's all. So it is free. So what I can do is I can connect to that environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close. Let me go in here, and sorry. Okay, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna close the remote connection. So, oh, wrong machine. Yeah. So I'm gonna close the remote connection, and now I'm going to connect again. So by the way, in the meantime, while I'm doing connection, any questions, comments, feedback? So let's uh, once again click on the Remote Explorer, and it's gonna see. You see here cloud hosted code spaces, and then you have self-hosted code spaces. Same example. I'm once again gonna pick up and connect to my self-hosted code space. Okay. One, keep in mind that this is running on my Surface Book at home. So this is where the scenario where you're sitting in a coffee shop or maybe at some other place in your house and you have your kind of a tablet in hand and you want to do some development work while your big heavy development server is kind of in your study or in another room or another place that you want to access. Or maybe it's in your office. It's sitting in the office that you want to do development on. So once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and let's do the same thing we did before. Let's run this thing. Run. Start debugging. So it says debugger attached, and once again, this is fully uh, full experience. So once again, I'm sure it's stuck on a breakpoint. Yes, it is. So I'm going to run this. And now if we go back to the browser window, you should see, oh, sorry, wrong window. So we should see the message here. And let's go back to the code and let's make some modifications to the code. This is our great. And by the way, while I'm saving this, just keep in mind it's happening on my remote machine. So this is very important to keep in mind. So as I'm making code changes, we are syncing those changes back to on to where your space is hosted. It can be self-hosted. It can be hosted by Azure. In both the cases, it's going there. Okay. So let me just make this. Oh, come on. So I'm gonna stop it and I'm gonna run this, save it and run this again, this time without any breakpoint, and just start this thing. Came up, and I'm going to go to my browser page and just refresh it. Yeah. So this is code spaces are great. And now the code has already also been modified on my machine that on in my self-hosted environment. Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of code spaces and how you can have, and it's very important to keep in mind a few things. Number one, you can have self-hosted code space, or you can have code spaces environment hosted by Azure, and for that you have option 2 core, 4 core, 8 core. You can bring your settings along. You can set the suspension, or what we call sleep time, like after how much time um, these code spaces will be suspended, so you don't, and that's based on your needs and how you're going to work the way you work. If you want to save cost, you can set the number very small, like 5 minutes. But if you want these environment to be available very quickly as you are multitasking, you may want to have a number higher, but that just keep in mind you will have to pay more, and that's not enough. If you have environment that you do development at home or in your office, you can host those you can make those self-hosted environment and publish them as code spaces that you can use. Okay, so with that, any questions? I know there are only 4 minutes.
Hey Naveed, this is Srini here. This
Hey,
is
Shri.
great. One thing that I keep getting is what is the difference between this, I mean, cost-wise, Windows Virtual Desktop and Codespaces, which is beneficial?
Yeah, so very good question. So let's say you did a Windows Virtual Desktop, okay? That desktop is running. Now you're responsible for shutting it down and bringing it up. Let's say that you were multitasking. So you are working on that for like 30 minutes, then you move on to your mail for like couple of hours, come back 2 hours. So during that time, that desktop is running unless until you are shutting it down every time and starting it back up, which can be kind of quite a work in itself. Okay, this thing is taking care of that behind the scene. So it notices that you are not using it, and what it do is it will suspend it when it is not being used automatically. Okay, and it's will come up as you try to connect to it. So there is no manual task involved. You see what I'm saying? So Windows Virtual Desktop, it gives you a lot of flexibility. I mean, you can do a lot of things there, but then it has its own limitation. In this one, this is strictly focused on dev scenarios. And the thing is, you don't have to RDP. This is not an RDP. One key difference, sorry, I forgot to mention, this is not RDP. This is, as you can see, I am using Visual Desktop on that machine, or I can use it on my machine, or I can use a browser, and I can use Visual Studio Code in the browser to access my dev environment in the Visual Studio Codespaces. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, folks. So uh, with that, I think um, we're going to end today's presentation. So I hope to see everybody next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Please feel free to email us if you have any ideas. I mean, you can email it to Azure Power Lunch email address, or I think my alias. I'm not sure if my alias is in the enzahir at microsoft.com. If you have any ideas that you wanna hear about, and I will publish this session on our YouTube site. Thank you very much, and happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining. A good day. Stay safe.
It's not